The film begins with two YouTubers, Ben and Tina, specializing in horror videos. They travel worldwide to visit abandoned and haunted places, then record their adventures and post them on their YouTube channel. In this episode, Ben and Tina travel to Ukraine to visit an abandoned hospital that is said to be haunted. The locals take this legend seriously, and many warn the couple not to go there. But Ben and Tina are determined to discover the truth, and they take cameras, video equipment, and modern microphones with them. Ben and Tina arrive at the abandoned hospital at midnight. The hospital has been abandoned for years and looks like it's in bad shape. The windows are broken, the doors are ajar, and the walls are dirty. The couple enters the hospital cautiously, and they begin to explore it. As they walk down the corridors, Ben tells Tina the hospital story. In the 70s, the hospital was home to an evil nurse. The nurse poisoned 7 children. And then she committed suicide. Since then, it is said that the ghost of the nurse and the ghosts of the children haunt the hospital. Ben and Tina search all over the hospital but don't see any ghosts. They explore the hospital's rooms and corridors and check every corner. But the hospital is abandoned, and there is no sign of life. The couple spends about an hour in the hospital, and then they decide to leave. They have searched everywhere and haven't seen any evidence of ghosts. They leave the hospital defeated but haven't given up their belief in spirits. After Ben finished producing the video he uploaded to the channel, he traveled to New York with Tina, where they lived. Ben is British, and Tina is American, but Tina's mother is French. After 3 months, they returned to France and began preparing for a new adventure. This time, their destination was Fritz Lake in western France, submerged by a whole village due to the floods in the 50s. Ben was very excited about the adventure, which would involve diving into the lake and exploring the underwater village. Ben arrived at the hotel where Tina was staying and found her practicing holding her breath in the bathroom. They had to be trained to regulate their breathing while diving in the lake. If anything happened to them, such as a malfunction or the end of oxygen cylinders, they would still have at least 2 minutes to get out of the lake. After Tina finished training, she went downstairs to Ben at the hotel. Ben asked her how long she had stayed underwater, and she replied that she had stayed underwater for 2 minutes. Tina was nervous about the adventure, but Ben reassured her and told her it would be fun. They took their car and drove to the lake. When they arrived, they discovered that many people there had come to film the underwater village. Ben sat at a table in the cafe and felt frustrated. The video of the abandoned hospital he uploaded to the channel had reached less than 10,000 views in 3 months, which is a deficient number. Tina suggested to Ben that they enjoy the lake without diving. They could rent a boat and sail in the sun and nature. Ben had to agree to Tina's suggestion so they wouldn't go there in vain. Ben stood up to order a drink for himself and Tina. On his way to the drinks cart, he met a French man named Pierre. They talked, and Ben learned that the lake before them was filled with the ruins of houses that floods had destroyed. He wouldn't find anything useful if he dove in. Pierre offered to take Ben to a different part of the lake, a secret place in the forest. There was a completely intact house submerged under the water, with its walls and doors still intact. They could dive into the lake, enter the house, and film whatever they wanted. Ben was very excited about the offer, and he agreed. He went to the table and brought the drinks to Tina. He told her about Pierre and Pierre's offer. Tina was hesitant but eventually decided because she didn't want to upset Ben. Ben and Tina got in the car with Pierre. On the way, Pierre told them that he had brought other tourists to this place to film the submerged house. Tina felt that Pierre was strange, mainly because he looked at her often. Pierre took them to a place in the forest, and they had to park the car and walk along the path between the trees until they reached the hidden part of Fritz Lake. Ben and Tina started putting on their diving gear and setting up the cameras and microphones they would take underwater. Pierre was sitting under a tree, watching them. They put on their diving suits, oxygen tanks, and gear, as well as the cameras that they would take with them in the water. Ben gave Tina instructions before he dived, and he said that they only had 1 hour of oxygen. He told her to be quick on the adventure and that they would take pictures of the submerged house and come out quickly. He promised her everything would be okay, and then he dove into the lake, leaving Pierre in the car. When they were in the water, a wire connected Ben and Tina. Tina told Ben she was worried about Pierre and that he might steal and leave their car. Ben said to her the car keys were with him, not Pierre. They completed their dive, and Ben was carrying a remote-controlled camera swimming in the water. They reached the main gate of the submerged house, surrounded by a large garden. The name of the family that owned the house, the Nisio Monti family, was written above the house door. They opened the gate and went inside. They attempt to open it, but it doesn't open, so they search for another way to enter the house. They try to open the windows but are very difficult to open. Suddenly, they find a big fish coming out of the house through a small opening. Ben is delighted because they can enter the house if he manages to open it. He sends his remote-controlled camera inside the door to explore the inside and determine whether they can enter. The camera captures the inside of the house, which is full of furniture, most of which is still in place. After seeing the contents of the house, Ben and Tina are reassured and realize that the site is not dangerous. On the contrary, they are very intrigued by the fact that the furniture is still in its place. They enter the house through the opening, where the fish come out and find themselves in a room on the second floor. They discover rifles and weapons, as well as pictures of the family, the owners of the house, holding the guns. Then they enter another room, but Ben hesitates because he notices someone standing behind a curtain. When he faces that direction, he finds that the person has disappeared. He pulls the curtain but doesn't find anything behind it. However, he assures Tina that he saw someone standing behind that curtain. Tina thinks he is trying to scare her and make her believe there is a ghost. After exiting the room, they swim safely out of the house to the ground floor to continue exploring. When they entered the house, they went to the upper floor, but suddenly they heard the sound of a piano. They get startled and send the camera to capture the large living room because the sound seems coming from there. The camera had a sonar motion sensor to detect any movement in the area. However, when they heard the piano sound, they suspected that there was another submarine in the house, trying to scare or joke with them, or perhaps even Pierre had followed them to scare them. But something strange happened, where the camera detected the movement of objects. So they started to feel anxious and approached the living room, where they found themselves in front of a broken piano and lamps. Ben guessed that a small fish might have passed by one of the piano strings, which made the sound they heard. Or maybe the piano sound was due to the water causing the strings to decompose, which led to them being cut and making the sound. But Ben knew he was lying to himself and Tina to calm himself and her down. Fear will increase their heart rate, leading to more oxygen consumption. But both of them were sure that there was something unnatural in the house. However, Ben wanted to continue the adventure because he knew that the video they would shoot of the place would get a lot of views. They then entered another room, where they found on its walls clippings from old newspapers, which were news with pictures about the disappearance of children from the same village that was here in the past before it sank. They felt that something strange was happening in the house in the past. Then they entered the kitchen, where they found themselves before a closed door. There was a statue blocking the door. Ben's curiosity made him want to open the door and enter to see what was behind it, even though Tina was very scared. But Ben promised her that this would be the last place they would join in the house, and then they would come out of the water. So Ben opened the door and pushed the statue before him, and they found themselves in a basement. They found in the basement ropes, many tools, filming equipment, a cinema screen, and old film reels. Suddenly, they saw a man and a woman lying dead in front of them, tied to chains hanging from the ceiling. The chains were cuffed to their sides and they were wearing iron masks. Tina was terrified and wanted to get out of the house immediately. But Ben promised her he would take a few quick shots of the place, and they would leave immediately. Tina told him to hurry up because she was scared. They approached the bodies and found a pentagram carved into the ground underneath them. This sparked Ben's curiosity, and he began to suspect that there had been some magic going on in the place in the past. They were also surprised that the bodies were still intact and had not decomposed. They were supposed to be skeletons by now. Tina decided to leave immediately, but the basement had a small storage room. Ben wanted to go in and film it. He went into the storage room and saw the human organs of children placed and preserved in glass jars. He came out quickly and told Tina what he saw. Tina was even more terrified. She assumed that the house owners were the ones who had kidnapped the children, killed them, and kept their organs in the jars. She suggested again to Ben to report the house to the police because it was a crime scene where crimes had been committed against the children who were kidnapped in the past. But Ben disagreed, and he told her that if they reported the police would confiscate the cameras that they filmed with. Or Ben suggests that they get out of the place, and that's enough shooting. So they ran until they reached the hole they entered, which was in a room on the second floor. But they are surprised when they find the hole blocked with bricks. They are terrified because they entered this hole initially, so how did it become blocked with bricks? Suddenly, Tina's daughter's ghost appears, so she freezes and is terrified. But the ghost disappears quickly. Tina gets nervous and feels she will never get out. But Ben calms her down and tells her that anxiety and tension will make her consume more oxygen. And he tells her they will try to get out of the windows. Ben tells her they still have time, so they try to open the windows but find them closed tightly. The glass is also shatterproof. But Tina notices a fish entering the house in front of them, so she feels reassured. And she believes there is another hole other than the hole that is blocked, and the fish entered from it. They follow the fish to see where it came from. They find the spot the fish came from, but it has an iron mesh. They cannot pass through it because their sizes are more significant than the size of the fish. They discover that they have reached the second basement containing the bodies. They were not paying attention, and Tina was surprised when she disappeared in front of her. Tina is surprised more when she does not find the bodies in their place as if they had untied the chains and freed themselves. After that, she finds herself being pulled down by the bodies trying to tie Tina with the chains they were connected with to keep her in their place. Tina continues to shout at Ben, but she does not find him. After a short time, Ben returns to her, and the bodies disappear. Tina blames Ben for not listening to her and tells him that the bodies moved from their place and tried to tie her with the chains and drown her. But when they look at the bodies, they find them in their usual spot, bound with chains. Tina is amazed, and they approach the bodies. Ben removes the iron masks from their faces and finds that they are Tina's parents and his wife. Suddenly, they open their eyes and look at them angrily. Ben and Tina scream as hard as they can and run as fast as they can to get out of the place. The bodies are freed from the chains that tied them again. And they started chasing Ben and Tina, so they got out of the basement quickly and closed the door behind them, and when they walked a little, they found the chimney of the house in front of them, so they tried to climb through it despite its narrowness. But suddenly, the chimney collapsed on them, and the bricks fell on their heads. And the bricks became an insulating layer between them and each other. Tina found herself alone, and Ben was trapped in another place. And the communication between them was also cut off. And meanwhile, Ben was trapped in a room on the second floor and discovered pictures containing information about Monty's family who lived there. And he knew that Pierre was Monty's son and his wife and that he had a younger sister, and that the two corpses that were chained were Monty's and his wife's corpses. And suddenly Ben saw the ghost of the girl that Tina had seen before, so he understood that it was Pierre's sister's ghost. Ben hid under the bed and watched the spirit wander around the bed. And suddenly, the ghost looked under the bed and found Ben. He was terrified because the ghost was able to control him. And at the same time, Tina was scared when she saw the chandelier light up, and suddenly Monty's corpse appeared and chased her. Tina ran away from him, looking for Ben or a way to get to his room. But when she got to his condition, she found him different. She told Ben, "We have little time left, and the oxygen is running out. We have to get out quickly." But Ben told Tina they were going to die here, so Tina tried to wake up from the shock he was in. Because he completely surrendered to death. Then Ben took her back to the basement, and she went with him because she thought he would take her to the exit. They reached a place inside the basement with a screen and cinema equipment. Happy played a tape that had Ben with his father years ago, and they were performing an organ removal operation on a child from the children they kidnapped to use them for sacrifice. When the children's parents learned what they were doing, they killed them. One night, People broke into the house wearing masks to attack Ben and his family. They killed Ben's sister, but Ben managed to escape before they killed him too. Then they chained Monty and his wife and left them in the house until they died. Ben said a flood happened afterward, so the house sank with its inhabitants. After watching the tape, Ben told Tina they had to sacrifice their lives in the house because this had become their fate. But Tina was running away from something. She was crossing the cinema screen or traveling through the middle of it. Ben started chasing her and held her until she died with him. The oxygen they were breathing was about to run out, and they had only 2 minutes to get out of the house and climb to the water's surface. Tina tried to convince Ben to wake up and get out, so Ben woke up and started to understand what was happening. But unfortunately, Ben's sister's ghost came from behind them and killed Ben with a dagger. Tina screamed and was very sad about his death. Then she was surprised to see Monty and his wife's ghost, but she was able to escape from them. Tina kept swimming fast while she was gasping for breath. She tried to find an exit from the house until she found an open part of the house's chimney after the roof collapsed. She came out of the hole and started to climb up, and she took off her diving gear so she could swim quickly to the water's surface before the 2 or 3 minutes were over. But unfortunately, after the last moment, she was 2 minutes late, so she gave up drowning because her breath had been cut off, even though she had approached dawn. Tina also died. In the last scene, Ben appears, taking 2 tourists to the same place where he brought Ben and Tina. The tourists tried to go into the water and see the underwater abandoned house, but it had completely sunk. The film ended.
Bye-bye.